Hi. So, let's get to the real reason that any of us showed up for these reviews, and that is the Meri Kody breakup fight. And I will warn you, this, for whatever reason, made me feel very emotional. So hi, if you're new here, I'm Cozy. I like to talk about sister wives and related reality television shows here on YouTube. I do like to remind you these videos are for entertainment purposes only. These are not facts. They're just my opinions about public figures sharing their lives on television. So, if we're cool, we're cool. Kody's going to show up to Meri in that giant truck, and that man terrifies me with how quickly he whips into driveways. This is the second episode in a row I've been like, that's a house, that's a house, that's a house, as he's pulled up. It wasn't as bad as the first time, but in retrospect, it's snowy, and those brakes kind of, listen, it made me nervous. He says he's going to Meri to discuss the divorce and how there are things to clarify. Okay. And you had a chance to do that when Meri offered to let you speak to the church leaders. You had that chance multiple times over. And now, because cameras are here and she's moving to Utah, now is the time you need to clarify. Sure. Kody says his whole life with Meri, she said one thing and he's felt that there's been this vibe for another. But he isn't going to accuse her of gaslighting. Looking at these episodes, I can see early episodes where Meri was perhaps less pleasant to be around is the nicest way to say it. But I do see some consistency in these later ones where she says, I am doing X, and she does it. To me, I feel like Kody's just unwilling to recognize growth and doesn't actually even know Meri anymore, which makes sense because he's basically avoided her for 10 years. He goes on to say that he's been shoveled bullcrap his entire life and he doesn't know where he is ever. The wheels start turning, though, because Kody likes to rewrite history, in my opinion. I wonder a little bit if he blames her and only her for the other failed marriages. Because, had he not sat there with his bowl of ice cream and prayed before deciding to marry her, he may have just stayed in the standard LDS faith and never gotten involved with these plural marriages in the first place. So I'm starting to get this vibe, and this is all opinion, of course, that his resentment has spread all the way back into her being the reason he's thrice divorced. But before we get into this fight, was anyone else absolutely taken aback by the fact that this man just decided to enter Meri's home as though he still had rights to do it? Meri reminds us about the Coyote Pass breakup and then explains the decision to move forward with the release. And there's this brief pause as we head back to Salt Lake to meet David for the 86th time. And Christine gives us a little tidbit about their time in therapy with Nancy, where she recalls Nancy asking her to make a list of qualities in a husband that were very important to her. And her list included a good communicator, someone present in her and her children's lives, and someone who's attracted to her. And looking back, Kody was none of those things on her list. She says she even told him about the list, and he's like, I'm not any of those things for you. And she agreed. I wonder about that conversation. I wish we could have heard that. To be a fly on the wall. David, in contrast, does find family exceptionally important and is a good communicator with a reputation for honesty. And we get this talking head with David where Christine is like, oh, boyfriend's a dumb word. And, because we're adults. And so he says, I'm your burrito. And she's like, that's probably inappropriate. And I didn't think anything of it until she said that, but they settle on soulmates. They decide that's the word they'd like to use. And David does tell us the story of how we got to this point. And they recall on the third date where Christine was very upfront about asking, are you going to friend zone me? And he teases her, you were desperate for affection. And she's like, yeah, I was. I would complain about sneaking the David date into the fight, but that we actually wanted to see. But it actually does sit in stark contrast to the behaviors that we get from Kody. And David's open and complimentary. And yes, I roll my eyes at the cutesy-wootsy nature of this date. But okay, maybe it can feel a little put on for the cameras. That's possible too. But I think this break from Kody's negativity is really needed in this. So, back to Kody's negativity. He sits opposite Meri looking angry and smug, kind of chewing on his lips before he finally breaks the silence to say, so what's going on with you? And she's like, I'm going to be up in Parowan. And I genuinely can't decide, is he angry, just disaffected, when he's like, oh, so you're going to move and live there? And she laughs and she's like, yeah, I am now. Good for her. That's where all her stuff is. He's like, well, we had this relationship about where our relationship is at. And she counters and says, no, after you made it clear that you were not interested in working on a relationship with me, hard cut to Kody's talking head where he's like, he thinks it's a good idea to tell the world Don't blame me for not loving you. I was doing my duty. Blame yourself if I don't love you, okay? What? I was, I'm, I'm not gonna lie. I immediately thought of this old DC Talk song, Love is a Verb, because, like, love is a decision we make, not just like this chemical reaction leading to feelings. Like, that's not all that love is. It, it's based on sacrifice and doing things for others. And yes, I'm very aware that this is a very Christian definition of the word love. But love isn't just attraction and giddy feelings. I love my kids and my husband, and I would give them anything or do anything I could for them because I want the absolute best for them. And in my opinion, Kody has failed to care about what's best for anyone save himself. Not even Robin in these last few episodes, because he's subtly blaming her for things and discounting her any feelings that would have to make him look inward and be accountable to anyone. He goes on to explain that when he's in love with a woman, that's her fault. And why are we applying blame to something as genuine as love? In other words, love to Kody is about what a woman can do for him. It's about her sacrifice, her actions, her deeds. And it's becoming clearer to me that Kody views Robin as having sacrificed so much because that is the only way that he can see her through this lens of love, allegedly, in my opinion. So I literally Googled what Kody was saying, and I got the direct quote from the episode back. And then scrolling further, it's just opinion piece after opinion piece about men who are justifying their affairs and attraction to other women, and then women blaming the other woman when their husbands are unfaithful, and they blame their wives for getting fat or getting tired or getting older or being overwhelmed with kids. Or they blame the other woman for being flirty and forward. And there is no joke here. It brought me to absolute tears to read these horrible things that men who have this same thought process think. Because, see, if this is how these men think, it makes sense to me that Kody would want to enter the world of polygamy. I have been through a lot of rough times in my life, and I have heard words very similar to this over the years that I have been alive. The fault always lies in the choices that were made. And I think Kody's choice was to stop loving those around him for what I perceive to be arbitrary reasons. And he continues on this tirade asking, well, what happens if I'm not in love with a woman? Well, I have something like 11 seasons of evidence. I perhaps 19 if I really want to be petty and point out that Kody said he never loved Christine. And he asks, is that just his fault? And no, I mean, attraction plays a role, so does compatibility. But honesty would be the appropriate response in this situation, not marrying a woman to dilute other relationships with other women. And that part is your fault. And he tells us if he's mad about a woman, passionate, wants to serve her, wants to rub her feet. And that's an interesting choice of phrasing here, because Kody was a religious man, and I can't help to see the parallel to biblical teaching, specifically the washing of feet as a sign of respect and honor. And he's like, if I want to carry her groceries, if I'm in, I want to buy her jewelry. I want her to feel special all the time. If I'm in love with a woman, I think that's her fault. And I think you should probably take a little accountability. And I'm not trying to get preachy on this channel, so bear with me. But I went and I pulled the biblical definition of love, and it's the verses that nearly everyone knows. 1 Corinthians 13, 4-7. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy or boast. It is not arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrongdoing, but rejoices with the truth. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, and endures all things. And I couldn't find a better way to put my feelings into words, and believe me, I tried, because all I could come up with is Kody sucks. And that's not my normal level of commentary. But he talks about doing his duty. But these words that I just read to you, that's what duty looks like. So Meri contrasts all of this beautifully by saying, I'm not placing blame. She simply acknowledged the fact that Kody said he was not interested in working on the relationship. And we hop back to their chat with Kody saying, so you want me to own it that much? And I think she just wants you to be responsible for things that you have outright said. Meri tries to say, he's putting words in my mouth, but Kody barrels through and claims he just doesn't want to, but he could fake it. And of course, Meri doesn't want a fake relationship. She did that for years already. And he argues that he wasn't saying he wouldn't work on it. She's just trying to make him own it. And Meri's like, I didn't know we were having a fight because I'm not open to that and I'm going to shut it down. But Kody's like, this is an accountability conversation. Is it? With a mutual agreement, the relationship isn't going to progress. But that negates what he just said in refusing to own that any part of this is his agreement and that the relationship, that said relationship was not going to progress. Talking to Kody is like talking to that one relative that we all have who thinks they know everything. Their politics, their opinions, their education. It's all vastly superior to everyone else's. And they're just going to talk to you in circles until you finally stand up and switch seats at Thanksgiving just to avoid them. You know what I'm talking about. And if you don't, you either have exceptionally healthy family dynamics or Meri agrees that yes, this was the arrangement, but it's clear from her face that she knows Kody is basically telling her, take accountability so I don't have to. That's how I read her look. She breaks it down for him like she's explaining a breakup to a small child. You had a part in it. I had a part in it. We're done. Boom. Perfectly said. But Kody then asks, how do we move on together? And Meri's like, there is no moving forward together. There's a long pause, a very clear, calm, no. And he agrees, right. Janelle gives us this peek into the past that she shares that she hung out with Meri and Kody together before she married him. And they were fun, they were goofy together. Yes, they had arguments. And Janelle says they were in it for the long haul. They were all figuring it out together. And there was a lot of emotional growth fitting everyone's personalities into the larger family. And I would actually say over the last several seasons, there's been a lot of growth from some people, regression from others, and stagnation from the last section. Meri shares that the breakdown of the relationship is definitely not all on Kody. She knows she had a part in it, but her assumption is that Kody doesn't like to see that he failed. And she does say that if he didn't want to fail, maybe he shouldn't have married the wrong person 1 or 2 or 3 times. So we're back with Kody and Meri, and she tells him, listen, nobody won here. And she's right. Nobody won. Meri lost out on time she's never going to get back. Kody lost out on relationships that at least one wife believes are irretrievable. No one. Not Meri, not Kody, not the kids, won in this situation. He says he never thought they'd be here. But really, because for multiple episodes you just kept saying you just needed Meri to leave. And now that she did, you're still unhappy. Kody gets really snarky and he's like, I got a special phone call from a special person. And we hard cut to the talking heads as Kody reminds us he got a call from church leadership sharing that Meri had been given a release on account of abandonment. And he still doesn't believe that's true because she was never abandoned. So I Googled divorce laws. I wanted to know what constitutes legal abandonment. And I know that this isn't Utah or Arizona, but Ohio law states that if a spouse leaves with no intention of returning for a period of at least 1 year, it's considered abandonment and therefore eligible for a marital termination. Some jurisdictions across the United States also recognize a term called alienation of affection, otherwise known as a sexless marriage, as a form of abandonment. So at least one state recognizes that this is abandonment, plus multiple jurisdictions. I mean, I'm sorry. In my opinion, if this would be legal grounds for abandonment, then if the church even slightly resembles that system, they have every reason to disagree with Kody. Meri points out that Kody knew it was happening and he could have been involved. She gave him the opportunity and the chance to go to the meeting with her and have his voice heard. She knows the church uses the word abandonment and that Cody's not really excited about that, but she says most people don't like what is truth. And she's not wrong. A lot of us don't want to hear the truth if it makes us look or feel bad. She's being honest, she's being vulnerable. And Kody asks her, why'd you move so quickly? And she goes, quickly? I mean, it's brilliant. Because this was the slowest moving release ever, if you take it from the standpoint of their relationship being over years previous, in Kody's opinion. She points out that this has been a long, slow, painful process. And she reminds him, I married you in 1990 because I was committed to you and I loved you. Then he gets obviously frustrated and starts messing with his gloves. And he starts well, you can choose, but I can't choose. And she wants to know, who said that? And he claims that when he was called and told about their termination, that was somehow said. And she finally gets angry and calls it bull. He tries to go, well, but now she is upset and tells him, you know what, that's not fair to me and that's not fair to you. And he smiles and agrees. And it's almost coming across, in my opinion, like he wanted to get under her skin. And now that he has and he's succeeded, he's good. He's fine. He's calm, cool, collected. But she continues on saying, I would have rather you told me years ago. And then he stops smiling like a fool and gets that angry face going again. So he tells us that he always felt compelled to stick it out with Meri, even though the relationship was terrible. And then he goes on and he's like, his greatest childhood trauma was Sonny and Cher divorcing when he was 6. 2 celebrities he doesn't know and was too young to understand the complex dynamics of marriage. This is what he falls back to. He goes on to say he doesn't know why he's still holding on a little bit, because he knows damn well he doesn't want to be in the relationship. Those are his words. And you aren't. And he continues saying he knows he damn well he doesn't want to be in a relationship with Janelle. And yet we've seen in the trailer where he asked Janelle to give it another go. And then he says he knows Christine did him a favor by being brave enough to leave. And I suppose that's something akin to growth, but I'm loath to call it that because he doesn't take any actual accountability. Meri admits that she's not going to offer him a lot of information. She says that she, Janelle, and Christine do not owe him access to their new lives. And she thinks that that realization is going to be the hardest part for Kody. And I don't think she's wrong, since he did just ask how they move forward together. And it appears he's still thinking he's going to have some type of control or involvement in their lives. And it's got to hit him where it hurts to know that he doesn't. Back at Meri's house, Kody says it's been confusing from day one. And Meri's like, well, it's sad to me. But Kody cuts her off and is like, what do you mean? And she's like, it's sad to me that our relationship was so confusing. Why he felt the need to interject at this point is beyond me. But on his own, Kody gets really animated and says, I wish I wouldn't have ever married her. Okay. Those are inside thoughts, firstly, because without Meri, there's no Janelle. And without Janelle, there's no Christine. And frankly, without Christine, there's no Robin. What I hear, my opinion is, when he says that he wishes he hadn't married Meri, it sounds like he's saying he wishes he hadn't had this particular family, and that's sad, because his kids are going to watch this episode, those that choose to watch, and they're going to hear what he said, and I don't want them to have to hear that. He continues on saying he married a woman he just didn't love so much that he wanted to serve her. And again, there's those religious undertones to this that are grinding my gears. I'm not a theologian. I am hardly the one to begin some sort of sermon up here on what it means to love and serve people. But I notice the tone there and I take issue with it. But this also somehow implies to me that Kody's love language is acts of service, and I just don't think that that's very high on the list. Because if I had to guess and give my opinion, giving and receiving gifts and quality time. And I know you guys are going to say, quality time, Cozy. Quality time? Yes. But in my opinion only, this seems to be the thing he withheld the most from people, making me think that it is very important to him. And I could be entirely off. It's just a hunch. It's just a guess. He continues on in clear frustration to say that whatever he did was never enough. And he says the marriage was on the rocks the entire time it existed. But how would he know that? Because he compares his relationship with Meri to his other marriages and points out that even Janelle and Christine didn't stick it out. He says survive, but he's getting awfully dark and that felt icky. He says he should have gotten out 25 years ago, so sometime around 1997 then. Well before we ever met the Browns, and that could have possibly disqualified him from marrying Robin 13 years later. Janelle says she doesn't even know who this guy is. Him saying these things he's saying now is not the same Kody they were all married to. And Kody tells Meri he wishes that she would have made her choice sooner, throwing it right back at her that she could have left. But also negating the why'd you do it so quickly, all of these things that he's saying to her. And she points out her choice was to stay, because if she had wanted to leave sooner, she would have. Her choice was to stay until it wasn't. Kody points out what I was saying before about church leadership not allowing you more wives if you were discarding the ones you already had. And he says he was in these terrible relationships, but unwilling to discard them. He didn't want to discard them, and he didn't even know he was in terrible relationships. His justification is you don't know you're in a bad relationship. You think you're in a normal relationship because everyone else is in bad relationships. So when you find a relationship with that deep emotional intimacy instead of the... And then he says, some people call it F and F, and the second word is fight. No one says that. No one. Not on national television, for sure. And he keeps joking, or he keeps going, and he says, well, maybe the first word is fight. But that doesn't make for intimacy, just orgasms. And that is the last time Kody Brown will make me say that on this YouTube channel, I promise you. Because, what? So Kody has the gall to say to Meri, you know what sucks? It isn't divorce that sucks. It's marrying the wrong person because you don't know. And Meri gives him an exasperated sigh. Oh, because you married me 6 months in and you married the wrong person you just didn't know. Of course, he needs to justify what he said by saying that if we're breaking up now, doesn't it mean it was the wrong person? Was it the right person, or was it just right at the right time? He said, sir, do you hear yourself? But he's not going to philosophize it. All he knows is they have different timestamps for when they were no longer happy. Because apparently Kody's was 20 years at... No. 7 years at... No. Their wedding day. Frankly, he just keeps saying different times, and I can't figure it out anymore. Meri points out that what sucks is marrying the wrong person and waiting 32 years to tell her. So we hop back over to Salt Lake City to catch up with Christine and David's date. And Christine's like, I'm excited to be with somebody. There are no threats to being with him. It's just her. And when she asks the $1 million question, isn't it weird to think of polygamy as a threat? That the other women are a threat to your relationship? No, Christine, that's how the outside world tends to view polygamy. We see it as this hierarchy of wives that are all jockeying for first place. Christine shares that one of her biggest things was wanting to have someone to kiss on New Year's Eve because she's never had that. And she admits to David that she didn't have a lot of affection in her previous marriage. Not like they do. And David teases, oh yeah, we don't have much affection at all. And she laughs and she's like, thank you. Thank you for showing me that I do like being affectionate and that I can have this. She tells us that she felt then and feels today that Robin and Kody are soulmates. And we've heard her say this before, but when she shares that she realized what soulmates felt like, she understands why Kody never wanted to leave Robin's house. She wouldn't want to leave David and stay somewhere else. She says that if a polygamist finds a soulmate in one of their wives, she doesn't know what it looks like for their family, except you entirely do. Refer to the last 14 years of your life, darling. She asks, how can he have a good relationship with his other wives if he has a soulmate relationship with one of them? I refer you back to the last 14 years of your life. Like, I can keep doing this, but you're answering the questions before you ask them. She and David discuss the direction of their relationship and that it's a little scary because it feels a little too good to be true. And how can it be this easy, this fast? How do they believe they're soulmates already? They acknowledge they're moving fast, but they have no intentions on slowing down. We do hop back over to Meri and Kody to close this out. And Meri tells us she's in a really good place. She feels peaceful about their situation. But Kody does not. She recognizes that some of the things he's saying are really mean, and he has a lot of internal work to do. And in her living room, Kody says, where we are now, I actually like you, and then giggles about it. And she scoffs and's like, Gods be praised. He tells her, I didn't like you for 6 years. And she's like, you need to admit that it's been longer than that. He won't. But he says, you know, it's moving from that point to get to the right place. And she flat out tells him, I'm not coming to hang out at Christmas. And he gets very somber. And she reminds him, I'm not your wife anymore. And he counters, I have a wife who says Meri is family, and I need to have her come over for Christmas. And if that's the case, then Robin needs to recognize boundaries. Kody cannot make Meri join them. And Meri says nothing, so he continues and says, I just normally disregard her opinion. 3 things. 1, we've not seen that on the show to be the case. 2, if that is the case behind closed doors, what a hideous thing to tell the world, that you ignore your wife's opinion. And 3, does he presume this will not make it to air? Robin will not see or him say this? It's like a prime fodder for the tell-all questions at the end of the season, don't we think? And Meri points out, rightly in my opinion, that he does not disregard Robin's opinion. He insists that he does, and he puts on that dark Kody voice. Really? You don't know me if you think I'm not a man of my own mind. And Meri responds, I do know that, but I also know you take into consideration other people's opinions. And he moves on from this to tell her that he just doesn't know how to define the relationship. And she's like, we're exes. Let's be real. And tells him, you don't have to worry about me. And he gives a weak okay. And she tells him that she wishes he just knew how amazing of a person that he was. And Couch Kody says he doesn't want any more enemies or another loss. But he tells Meri, bon voyage, happy life, happy journey. He doesn't know what to say beside that. And I cannot figure out what in the world this conversation was even for. It did nothing to rehab his public standing. And if it was to convince her to come over for Christmas, that was the wrong way to do it. But a weirdly giddy Kody on the couch tells us that he hopes Meri will call him in the future when she has something fun to share. He's embarrassed that his other divorces have created contempt and contemptuous enemies. And he's sad about it, but he doesn't look sad. And then he says he doesn't know what the future holds. Why on earth would you giggle about Meri calling you in the same episode where you growled at us and said you wish you hadn't married her? Why do you want her to call you now when you've shown nothing but contempt for her in this entire situation? Why did you bother going over to her home for this conversation unless it was a producer-driven thing or Robin asked you to? And why, if Robin wants her at Christmas so badly, did we not see Robin going over and reaching out to Meri to make that happen? Like, I have so many questions, but I feel like all the answers are just going to make me sad or angry. So, frankly, I hope they don't answer them. This second half of the episode, I initially went in thinking, oh my gosh, this is going to be juicy and so exciting. And I came out feeling sad to know that there are people in this world who think the same way that Kody does. Like, I just feel sad that that is the case. And I genuinely hope that if you stuck with me to the end here, that you didn't feel that I was being too preachy or ridiculous. I just happened to notice that there were definitely some religious parallels in this. And as someone who does believe, it really digs at my soul to see that coming out in such a negative way. And so I hope that you can bear with me and forgive me if I got a little off the rails there. It just really made me sad and very emotional to see these kinds of things. So hopefully next week's episode, where I believe we're going to see Meri actually making the move to Parowan, that should be exciting, is a little bit less heavy, a little less upsetting, and maybe a little bit more exciting. I do struggle a little bit with Christine and David because we have seen it all, we have heard it all. It is not necessarily all new information, but I'm trying to keep it light, fluffy, and happy up in here. So we'll see what we can do. I don't have too much to tell you guys at the end of video announcements. I frequently have some, but I suppose the only thing I have to tell you is I found a job. I'm not telling you where. I'm not telling you doing what. Just know that I found one, and I don't have an official start date yet. But as far as I know, it should not affect our YouTube videos. I should still be able to get them done in a relatively reasonable and timely fashion. So, barring any more emergency room visits, we should be good to go. Other than that, I don't really have anything else for you. I look forward to the next episode and seeing you down in the comments. Bye, guys.